In the vast lineage that flows from Adam to Noah, tucked within the pages of Genesis, there is a man whose name many pass over quickly. His story is brief, yet his place is monumental. His name is Jared. Jared means descent. His very name carried prophetic weight, for he lived during a time when humanity was descending, slipping further and further away from God's design. Violence, corruption, and sin were beginning to stain the earth. And yet, in the middle of this decline, Jared's life stood as a quiet but powerful testimony, a reminder that even in a darkening world, faith can still burn brightly. He may not have fought great battles like David. He may not have built an ark like Noah. He may not have spoken prophecies like Isaiah. But Jared carried a legacy that shaped eternity. To understand Jared's significance, we must look at his place in the genealogy. He was the sixth generation from Adam. His father was Mahalalel, the man whose name meant the one who praised God. And his son was Enoch, the man who walked with God so closely that he was taken into heaven without ever tasting death. That means Jared stood as a bridge, a living link between a generation that still remembered Eden and a generation that would witness God's judgment in the flood. Genesis 5 tells us, Jared lived 162 years, and he begot Enoch. After he begot Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Genesis 5:18-20. Notice how simple the record is. No visions, no battles, no mighty acts. Just faithfulness, just perseverance, just a life of nearly 1,000 years, carrying the covenant line forward. Sometimes the most powerful story is not the one filled with fireworks, but the one marked by faithfulness over the long haul. Jared lived during a time when sin was spreading like wildfire. By the time his grandson Methuselah was born, the world was already ripening for judgment. Wickedness was multiplying. Genesis 6 paints the picture. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. Imagine living in such a world. Every generation was slipping further away from God. Violence filled the earth. People were worshiping false gods. Darkness was thickening. Yet right in the middle of this downward spiral, Jared raised a son who would shine like a beacon of light, Enoch. This teaches us something profound. Even in the darkest times, it is possible to raise children who walk with God. If Jared had one crowning achievement, it was this. He fathered Enoch. Enoch became the man who walked with God, a phrase that Scripture rarely uses. His intimacy with the Lord was so deep that God simply took him. He did not die. He was carried into eternity. Now think about this. Where did Enoch learn faith? Who taught him to walk with God? Certainly God himself drew him. But Jared's role as a father cannot be overlooked. Behind every man or woman of great faith, there is often a parent or mentor who quietly planted the seeds of belief. Jared's greatest contribution was not his own spotlight, but the faith he passed down. Parents, hear this. Your greatest ministry may not be what you accomplish in your own lifetime, but what you instill in your children. Though Jared's name appears only briefly in the Bible, his life was vital in God's story. He was a pillar in the chain of redemption. Without Jared, there would be no Enoch. Without Enoch, there would be no Methuselah. Without Methuselah, no Lamech. Without Lamech, no Noah. And without Noah, humanity would not have survived the flood. That's the beauty of Jared's story. He reminds us that faithfulness in the background matters just as much as boldness in the foreground. Paul reminds us in 1 Corinthians 15:58, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." Even if no one writes a book about your life, even if history does not record your name in bold letters, God sees your faithfulness, and through you, He may be shaping eternity. So what can we take from Jared's life? 1. Names carry prophetic weight. Jared's name meant descent. He was born into a time when humanity was descending into sin. Yet he proved that you don't have to be defined by the darkness around you. You can stand firm. 2. Faithfulness is greater than fame. Jared's story has no dramatic events, yet his quiet perseverance for 962 years carried forward God's covenant line. Sometimes your greatest impact is not in one grand moment, but in the daily choice to remain faithful. 3. Parenting is eternal work. Jared raised Enoch, who walked with God. He planted seeds that grew into a legacy. Parents, never underestimate the eternal value of your role in shaping your children's faith. 4. Your story may be hidden, but it is not wasted. You may feel like your life is ordinary, unnoticed, but God sees. Jared's story whispers that even hidden faithfulness echoes into eternity. Friend, maybe you feel like your life doesn't measure up. Maybe you feel small compared to the heroes of the Bible. But Jared's life teaches us this: ordinary faithfulness is extraordinary in God's eyes. Perhaps your calling is not to build an ark like Noah, or to part the Red Sea like Moses. Perhaps your calling is to raise children who know God, to carry the line of faith one step further, to remain steadfast when the world is descending into corruption. And that's not small, that's monumental. Jesus himself said in Matthew 25 verse 21, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things, I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." Jared's life whispers across the centuries. Sometimes your greatest impact is not in your own spotlight, but in the faith you pass down, faith that shapes eternity. He reminds us that even in a descending world, you can live faithfully. You can raise children of light. You can anchor the future. So the next time you read through the genealogies of Genesis, pause at Jared's name. Remember the quiet faith of the man whose legacy became the seedbed for Enoch, for Methuselah, for Noah, and ultimately for the hope of salvation through Jesus Christ.